Spencer Thorne slammed the door of his penthouse shut behind him, the echo bouncing off marble walls as he muttered, "I need to get the hell out of here." His assistant had quit that morning. His investors were breathing down his neck about expanding the tech company he built from scratch. And his ex had just announced her engagement in a magazine interview where she casually mentioned how emotionally unavailable he'd always been. So yeah, he booked the first flight out. Now, sitting in the back seat of a black SUV winding up a coastal road in Tulum, Spencer loosened the top buttons of his linen shirt and finally exhaled. He wasn't here to network, or build, or fix anything. He was here to disappear. The boutique resort was perched on a cliff, surrounded by nothing but jungle and sea. No paparazzi, no board meetings, just low-lit villas, endless ocean, and apparently live music every night. He didn't care. He wasn't here to be entertained. But the moment he stepped into the open-air restaurant that evening, everything else faded because she was singing. Her name wasn't on the menu, but she should have been. She stood barefoot on a small stage, wearing a flowy white sundress that caught the breeze like a sail, her long brown hair falling over one shoulder as her voice wrapped around the strings of her guitar. She sang like she didn't care who was listening, and Spencer couldn't stop listening. When she finished, the small crowd clapped politely. Spencer didn't move. His hand stayed wrapped around the glass of mezcal he hadn't touched. She gave a quick smile, nodded at the crowd, and stepped down from the stage. Spencer stood up before he even realized it. She was walking toward the bar, not looking at anyone, but Spencer took a few long strides and cut her off gently, standing in front of her. Her eyes lifted to meet his, brown, clear, confident. "Hey," he said, not sure what the hell he was doing. His voice trailed off. She raised an eyebrow. "You okay there?" He laughed under his breath. "Yeah, just forgot how words work for a second. That was beautiful, your voice." Her lips curved, not flirtatious, just amused. "Thanks. Do you sing here every night? Every other?" "Depends on the weather, the crowd, and if the owner's in a good mood." She tilted her head. "You staying at the resort? Just got in today. Then welcome to paradise. Do I get your name too, or is that extra?" She let out a soft laugh. "Jessa Avery." "Spencer." She reached past him to grab a water bottle from the bar. "Nice to meet you, Spencer. Enjoy your vacation." And just like that, she walked off. He turned slowly, watched her disappear down a stone path between palm trees. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't performing for the spotlight, and she just walked away from him like he was any other guy. He hadn't felt that in years. The next morning, Spencer woke up before sunrise, went for a swim in the ocean, and spent the day doing absolutely nothing. He didn't check his phone. Didn't answer the dozen messages from his CFO. But that night, he showed up early to the restaurant, and Jessa was already on stage. This time, she saw him. Her voice didn't change. She didn't smile, but her eyes held his for just a second longer than necessary. After the set, he was already waiting by the bar with 2 glasses of white wine. "I figured I'd try again at basic social interaction," he said, offering her one. She took it. "You're persistent. Only when it matters." She studied him for a beat. "You're not the usual kind of guest here." "What kind is that?" "Wealthy, tired, escaping something." He lifted his glass. "Guilty on all counts." Jessa leaned against the bar, facing the ocean. "So what are you running from?" Spencer was silent for a moment. "Noise, pressure. People who want things from me, people who think they know who I am." "And do they?" "No." She looked at him, no judgment in her face, just curiosity. "You don't talk like a man used to being ignored." "I'm not," he admitted. "But you didn't seem to care who I was last night." "I don't." That made him smile. They sat on a lounge chair under the stars for hours after that. He learned she used to live in Nashville, tried to make it as a singer-songwriter, got close but burned out. Too many broken promises and not enough rent checks, so she left. She didn't want fame anymore, she just wanted peace. Spencer didn't say much about himself, only that he worked in tech, that he built a company that worked a little too well. That he needed to remember who he was when no one was watching. And Jessa listened. She didn't ask invasive questions, she didn't fawn over him, she just made him feel seen. By the 3rd night, they were inseparable. Dinner on the beach. Late night walks barefoot through the surf. One night, he surprised her with an outdoor movie on the sand. A staff member set up a projector, pillows, and champagne. Jessa stared at the setup and laughed. "You're not subtle, are you?" "I don't do subtle," he said, handing her a glass. She leaned into him as the ocean roared behind them. "You're not like anyone I've ever met. Neither are you." He kissed her that night. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't casual, it was the kind of kiss that made you forget where you were. She touched his face afterward, whispered, "You're not just escaping something, are you?" "No," he murmured. "I think I just found what I didn't know I was looking for." And for the first time in years, Spencer Thorne didn't want to leave. The air was heavier that evening, the kind that clung to your skin and made the waves sound louder. Spencer sat on the edge of the infinity pool that overlooked the cliff, his feet dipping into the warm water as he watched the sun begin to head for the horizon. The past few days had passed in a blur he hadn't anticipated, not the kind where hours slipped unnoticed, but the kind where every second felt full. Jessa had a way of making time stretch, of making a single glance feel louder than a room full of voices. He hadn't planned to see her tonight. She wasn't scheduled to sing, and he hadn't reached out. He wanted to see if she'd come anyway. Behind him, the soft sound of sandals on stone caught his attention. He didn't turn, not right away. He waited until the movement stopped beside him. "Didn't think I'd see you out here," Jessa said, her voice lower than usual, like she'd been quiet for a while before speaking. "I wasn't going to come out," he replied, "but I didn't want to miss the sunset." She eased down beside him, her linen pants brushing against the wet stone. "It's the only part of the day people don't try to control," he looked over at her. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said after a pause. "Just got a call from my sister. Her car broke down in Georgia and she needed help wiring money for repairs. You send it, of course." "Doesn't matter if it empties my account. She's family." Spencer watched her profile as the fading light caught the curve of her jaw. "You always take care of everyone else, don't you?" Jessa shrugged. "Someone has to." He leaned back on his hands. "What about you?" "Who takes care of you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled her legs up and wrapped her arms around her knees. "I stopped expecting that a long time ago. I don't like that answer. I didn't ask for your approval." He laughed quietly. "Fair." Jessa tilted her head. "You don't strike me as someone who laughs easily." "I don't." "So why now?" He looked at her, serious again. "Because you disarm me." She blinked, then smiled, small and real. "That's dangerous, you know." "I'm not afraid of danger. Maybe you should be." He didn't respond, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The sun sank lower, bleeding orange and violet into the sky. Finally, she broke the silence. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I've been here almost a year. I've had conversations with hundreds of people, but none of them ever felt like they saw me. Not really. And then you show up and it's like..." She stopped herself. "Like what?" "It's like you walked in carrying a mirror I didn't ask for." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I didn't come looking for you, Jessa. I didn't even know I needed you until I did." She looked down at their joined hands, her thumb brushing lightly over his. "And what happens when you leave?" "I don't want to think about that." "You need to," he sighed. "I know, but right now I just want to be here." She looked back out at the water. "You always get what you want, don't you?" "I used to think I did," he said. "But I'm starting to realize I've never actually known what I wanted until now." Jessa stood, her hand slipping from his. "Sun's almost gone. You should put on shoes if you're coming to dinner." He stood too. "Are you inviting me?" "I'm saying I'll be there. Whether you show up is up to you." She walked away, and this time he didn't follow. Not yet. He needed a minute. Because for the first time since he'd arrived, he wasn't thinking about escape. He was thinking about what came next. That night, the restaurant was busier than usual. Couples filled the candlelit tables, and the scent of grilled fish and citrus hung in the air. Spencer wore a pressed white shirt open at the collar and gray trousers. No watch, no phone, nothing that said power or purpose. Just a man trying to be present. Jessa was already seated at a table near the edge of the terrace. She hadn't dressed up, but she didn't need to. Her presence made the space around her more vivid, like she belonged to the moment in a way no one else did. He sat across from her without a word. She poured them both water from the carafe on the table. "You came, told you, I don't do subtle." The waiter arrived with menus. Jessa didn't look at hers. The chef always makes something different for me. I never know what I'm getting. You trust him that much. I trust patterns. He's never let me down. I could learn from that. You could afford to let go, just a little. Their food arrived. Hers a grilled snapper with mango salsa, his a seared duck breast with tamarind glaze. They ate slowly, conversation unfolding between bites. What did you want to be when you were a kid? She asked. An astronaut. She stared at him. Seriously? Yeah, I used to sit on the roof and stare at the stars for hours. Thought if I got far enough away from Earth, I'd understand it better. And now I think it's the people closest to you that help you understand it, or don't. She nodded slowly. I wanted to be a vet. Why didn't you? My dad said it was impractical. Said music was a hobby I could turn into a living if I was lucky, but med school was a waste of time and money. Sounds backward. He was never good at seeing me. Spencer set his fork down. I see you. You think you do, she said softly. But seeing someone in pieces is different than seeing the whole. I want the whole. A silence settled between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, like they were both on the edge of something they hadn't defined yet. After dinner, he walked her back to her villa. They stopped outside her door, neither moving. You're not just a vacation, he said, and you're not just a man passing through, she replied. He leaned in and kissed her, slower this time, deeper. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. Spencer, she murmured, don't break my heart. I won't, he whispered back. But I can't promise I won't ask you to change your life. She closed her eyes. Then I need to know who you actually are. You will, he said, because this time I'll tell the truth, and he meant it, every word. Spencer's phone buzzed for the third time that morning, face down on the edge of the teakwood breakfast table. He didn't reach for it. The ocean breeze filtered through the open floor to ceiling doors of his villa, carrying the soft rustle of palm leaves and the distant call of gulls. He stared out at the water, untouched coffee cooling beside him. He hadn't slept, not really, after kissing Jessa, after what she'd said about needing to know who he actually was. He'd lain awake most of the night, not from anxiety, from the clarity that had finally begun to settle. He'd built a life on being in control, on knowing what people wanted from him and staying 3 steps ahead. But Jessa didn't want anything from him except the truth, and he wasn't sure how to give it without unraveling everything. The fourth buzz came. He flipped the phone over. 1 missed call from Bennett, his company's legal counsel, and 2 from his CFO. All marked urgent. The weight of it pressed against his chest, but he ignored it. Instead, he stood, pulled on a short-sleeved shirt, and left the villa. Jessa wasn't at the stage that evening. The restaurant was still alive with chatter, but her guitar sat untouched against the back wall. Spencer didn't sit. He asked the hostess if she'd seen her. She said she wasn't feeling well, the woman replied, her accent lilting gently. Went for a walk earlier toward the mangrove path. Spencer headed straight there. He found her near the edge of the boardwalk, barefoot, leaning over the wooden railing and staring into the still water below. Her hair was pulled up, a few damp strands clinging to her neck. You disappeared, he said, slowing as he approached. I needed quiet, she answered without looking back, and I figured you had calls to take. Spencer stepped beside her. I didn't answer them. That's not the same as not having them. He rested his forearms on the railing. You asked me to tell you who I really am. I did, he glanced at her. You sure you want to know? I don't believe in half-truths, not anymore. He nodded, then looked out at the stillness around them. My name is Spencer Thorne. I built a company that designs data encryption software. We license to governments, private security firms, even medical institutions. I started in my garage. Now it's valued at a little over $400 million. Jessa's brow didn't even twitch. Why didn't you tell me that from the start? Because it changes how people look at me. Makes them see the money first and the man second. And you thought I'd care? I didn't know what to think. I was too used to everyone else having an angle. I don't have one, she said calmly. I'm not trying to date your bank account. I know that now. She turned to face him. What else? He hesitated, then said, my father hasn't spoken to me in 6 years. He thinks what I do is dishonest success. He wanted me to become a civil engineer like him. I paid off his mortgage anyway. He returned the check. Jessa's eyes softened. That's a lot to carry. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I didn't assume you were. She pushed off the railing and walked slowly down the path. He followed. After a minute, she asked, "Why did you really come here, Spencer?" "I told you. I needed—" "No," she interrupted gently. "The truth, not the version you polished for strangers." He ran a hand through his hair. "I was about to sign a deal that would have made us public, massive buy-in from international investors, and I couldn't do it. I panicked. Called my assistant, told her to cancel everything, and booked a flight here. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left because it didn't feel right. No. Because for the first time I realized I didn't know what I was chasing anymore." They reached a clearing where the path opened to a quiet cove, the sand untouched. Jessa stepped onto it, letting the water lap at her ankles. Spencer stayed back. "When I met you, I thought I was just distracting myself." She turned to him. "And now I think I was waking up." Jessa stood quietly for a moment, then said, "I watched my mom stay in a marriage for 27 years because she was afraid of starting over without money. I swore I'd never let money be the reason I stayed in something or left it. I'm not asking you to need me. I don't," she said, "but I might want you. That's more dangerous." He stepped onto the sand, slowly closing the distance between them. "I don't want this to be something that fades when I leave." "Then don't leave." The words hung in the air between them. He exhaled. "I've never stayed in one place this long without losing my mind, and yet you're still here." "I don't want to run anymore, Jessa." "Then stop." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. They stood there, waves curling around their feet, the silence between them no longer filled with tension, but with something far more dangerous: hope. He didn't kiss her this time. He just held her hand like it meant something. Because it did. And for the first time in his adult life, Spencer Thorne wasn't thinking about what came next. He was living it. Spencer stood at the edge of the veranda outside Jessa's villa, watching her as she packed a small woven bag with a bottle of water, a journal, and a rolled-up towel. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the tile, and from the open door behind him, the scent of lime and grilled shrimp drifted out from the kitchen. She looked up. "You're quiet." "I was thinking," he said, stepping inside. "About what it would take to stay." Jessa tucked her hair behind her ear. "You don't owe me permanence, Spencer, just honesty." "I know," he said, "but I'm not interested in temporary." She leaned her shoulder against the doorframe, her eyes not shying away. "Then let's talk about what happens when your board starts asking where their CEO is." "I already spoke to them." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You did? This morning. I told them I'm extending the break until further notice. I'm not stepping down, but I'm restructuring. Less day-to-day, more oversight. I've already appointed someone to handle the expansion from New York." Jessa crossed the room slowly. "You made that decision in a day." "I didn't make it in a day," he said. "I just finally stopped pretending I didn't already know what I wanted." She studied his face, trying to read what lay beneath the calm set of his features. "And what exactly is that, you?" he said, his voice steady. "I want you." She gave a short breath, almost a laugh, but her eyes shimmered. "You don't even know what that means yet." "I know it means not flying back to a city that stopped feeling like home years ago. I know it means being somewhere I'm not constantly proving myself. And I know it means building something that doesn't disappear the moment I leave a room." She walked past him then, out onto the veranda, and he followed. Below them, the ocean pulsed softly against the sand. "I never expected anything from you," she said, her voice quiet. "Not a future. Not promises. I've been on my own too long to believe in easy endings." "Then believe in earned ones," he said. "Because I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking if there's space in it for me." Jessa turned to face him fully. "You still sleep with your phone under your pillow?" He shook his head. "Not since the night you kissed me." She stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. "I'm not afraid of you being rich. I'm afraid of you retreating into that world when things get hard." "I know," he said. "And I'm telling you, I've never been clearer. I didn't fall in love with you because you made things easy. I fell because you made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Present, grounded, human." She didn't speak for a long moment. The breeze lifted her dress against her knees, and the distant whine of a boat engine hummed faintly across the water. Then she said, "I've been offered a permanent music residency here. It pays enough, not much, but enough. I turned it down last week. Why? Because I didn't know if I was staying. And now," she smiled, small and certain, "now I'm not afraid to." Spencer leaned in, kissed her forehead, then her lips. This time the kiss wasn't urgent or questioning, it was a vow. When they pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest. "You know," she murmured, "I never pictured myself with someone who wears cufflinks." "I haven't worn cufflinks in weeks," he said, grinning. "Progress," she whispered. That night Spencer arranged a surprise. He didn't ask for permission. He just did what he did best. He created something unforgettable. When Jessa arrived at the cliffside terrace just after sunset, she stopped in her tracks. The candles lined the stone path in soft rows. A long table was set for two, framed by hanging lanterns made of driftwood and glass, swaying gently above them. A violinist played something slow and aching in the background. At the far end of the table, Spencer waited in a pale blue shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie. She blinked. "What is this?" "I asked the staff for something simple," he said. They added the violinist. She looked around, slowly stepping forward. "It's beautiful. I wanted to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" "That we found each other," he said. "Even though we weren't looking." They sat, and dinner began. Fresh ceviche, roasted vegetables, a light sea base with citrus glaze. Everything was quiet, unhurried. Jessa laughed more than she had in weeks, and Spencer never looked away from her for more than a few seconds at a time. After dessert, he stood and held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. He led her to the edge of the terrace. The violinist continued playing as the stars began to pierce through the velvet sky. Spencer pulled her close and began to move, slow and sure, guiding her into a dance. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she said softly. He closed his eyes. "You're not alone." Later, he walked her back to her villa but didn't go inside. Instead, he kissed her once more, then stepped back. "Tomorrow," he said, "I want to show you something." "What?" "You'll see." The next day, he took her into town, into a part of Tulum she hadn't expected him to know. Down a quiet street, past sun-faded buildings, he unlocked a door to a small, airy space with exposed beams and wide windows that looked out onto a courtyard dotted with flowering vines. Jessa stepped inside slowly. "What is this?" "A music studio," he said. "Or it will be." "I leased the space this morning." She turned, stunned. "For what?" "For you," he said. "If you want it, to record, to teach, to build something of your own." Her lips parted. "You're giving me a studio, I'm giving you a start," he said. "The rest is yours." She crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him, and held him tight. "I've never had anyone believe in me like this," she whispered. "You believed in me first," he said, and that was how it stayed. Spencer never went back to New York full-time. He split his work between remote meetings and occasional trips, but his home became the place he never intended to stay. Jessa's studio opened 6 weeks later. The first artist she recorded was a local kid with a heartbreaking voice and no money. She paid him in studio time and fish tacos. Spencer watched her from the doorway that day, arms crossed, eyes soft. She turned, caught him watching, and smiled. "You really did mean it," she said. "I always will," he replied. "I didn't just escape stress. I found my life." Together, they built something neither of them had ever trusted before, a love without performance, a future without conditions, and a life that wasn't about the noise but the music between it. Jessa tightened the last tuning peg on her guitar and lifted her head as the door creaked open behind her. The faint scent of cedarwood cologne was all she needed before she turned to see Spencer stepping inside the studio, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder and a tin of fresh cinnamon rolls in hand. "You bribing me into taking a break?" she asked, setting the guitar aside. "No," he said, setting the tin on the desk beside her. "I'm bribing you into eating something that isn't granola and apples." She narrowed her eyes. "How do you know what I've been eating?" "I live with you. I see things." She took the lid off the tin and inhaled. "Okay, fair." "These smell ridiculous." I had them delivered from that bakery in Merida, the one you mentioned in passing 2 weeks ago." Her hands stilled. "You remembered that? I remember everything you say when you're excited." She smiled and leaned over to kiss him softly before pulling back. "You're dangerous, only to your blood sugar." They sat on the worn leather couch in the back of the studio as the late morning sun slipped through the high windows. Jessa curled her legs under her, cinnamon roll in one hand, the other resting on his knee. He looked around the room. "It's changed since I first brought you here." "You mean it's finally messy?" "I mean it feels lived in, like it belongs to you." "It does," she said. "In a way nothing ever has." He nodded, then reached into the canvas bag and pulled out a thin envelope, setting it on her lap. "What's this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he rested an arm along the back of the couch and waited as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a legal document. Ownership. She looked up sharply. "This is a deed," he nodded. "To the building, it's yours." Her breath caught. "Spencer, you don't owe me anything. It's not a favor, it's not leverage. It's because I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am about building this life with you." But he placed a finger gently against her lips. "No buts. You've given me peace, clarity, and the kind of love I didn't know existed. This isn't a gift, it's a foundation." She set the paper down, her eyes bright. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything, just keep building, keep singing. Keep living like you deserve it." He kissed her then, slow and lingering, his hand sliding to the back of her neck. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered, the words falling like they'd always belonged there. He smiled, his thumb brushing beneath her jaw. "I've loved you since the moment you walked off that stage and didn't look twice at me." Years passed, but the rhythm of their life never lost its music. Jessa's studio flourished. It wasn't just a place to record, it became a home for local artists, a space where voices that had never been heard found their echo. She held weekly open mic nights in the courtyard, and the community grew around her like wildflowers. Spencer turned his role at Thorne Systems into something leaner, more intentional. He only traveled when necessary, and when he did, Jessa came with him. She played small sets in cities she'd never seen before, and they made a habit of getting lost on purpose. They never moved away from Tulum. The cliffside villa became their home, filled with laughter, vinyl records, sand trailed in from bare feet, and the scent of breakfast Spencer insisted on cooking every Sunday morning. On the first anniversary of the studio's opening, Spencer didn't rent a venue or call in favors. Instead, he walked Jessa to the beach just before dawn. The tide was low, the sky soft and violet. He held her hand, and when the sun broke the horizon, he dropped to one knee. She didn't cry. She just laughed, breathless, and said yes before he even opened the box. They married on that same beach 6 weeks later. No tuxedos, no media, no fanfare. Just them, barefoot, surrounded by music and wind and the people who had become their family. Jessa wore a simple dress that danced in the breeze, and Spencer couldn't stop looking at her like she was the first and last thing he'd ever believe in. After the ceremony, he surprised her again. A small bungalow tucked into the hills just outside Oaxaca. A retreat. No phone service. No responsibilities. Just them and the promise of a life that no longer needed noise to feel full. They spent a week there, reading, cooking, making love by candlelight, no clocks, no plans, just presence. When they returned, life resumed. Not in the way it had before, rushed, hungry for more, but in a way that felt like breathing. Easy. Whole. One evening, as Jessa finished mixing a track with a young singer who reminded her of herself 10 years ago, Spencer walked in holding a small, hand-carved box. She raised a brow. "Another surprise?" "Not quite." He set it on the table. "Just something for the future." Inside, she found a pair of tiny headphones, baby-sized, her eyes lifted to his. He nodded. "We're going to need a lullaby playlist." She didn't speak, just stood, crossed the room, and buried her face in his chest. They didn't rush anything. They never had to, but they built slowly, deliberately, with love at the center of everything they touched. Years later, their child would run barefoot along the beach outside the villa, laughter echoing through the trees. Music would still drift from the studio windows, new voices finding their wings. Spencer would still kiss Jessa every morning like it was the first time. And Jessa would still look at him like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Together, they had created a life that didn't follow a script. It was better. It was theirs. Forever.